This is the regular board meeting of the MIT. It is now 8:30 a.m. on October 12th, 2020, and 4. Mr. Adams, you would just send an invitation, and Mr. Singh, you pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Most gracious, we turn to the blessing of God, and realize all of the God and God, all of the sins of God, and the Lord with God, you give us. Lord, we just thank you, Lord, for this day that you allow us to see all of this, and thank you, God, for the serve like a shield with us. Lord, we pray, God, that we pray, God, you can work, God, all things we done these things, Lord. We pray, God, that we can do this, and have us to rest, all that we say, yes, all we bless them, all this in Christ Jesus' name, we pray, that's all. Amen. The district provided a special link to the public comment sign-up sheet for this meeting. This link is on our district webpage under our school board. No anonymous submission to be read. Public comment participants must follow procedural guidelines of submitting name and topic on public comment sign-up sheet. Comments submitted shall not take more than 2 minutes for the board president to read to the board. No submission will be given less than 1 minute. The district followed the public comment procedure for this meeting. The public comment sign-up time is 20 minutes before the start of the regular meeting. The submission times are listed on the notice for this meeting, and the district thanks you for your interest and comments to the board. No comments. I need a motion to approve the consent items as presented, minutes of the regular board meeting of September 21st, 2020, and the gifted and talented program evaluation. President, Commissioner Williams made a motion. I'll second. Mr. Adams second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. This time I'm going to have our campus principal stand up and just a brief overview of the first 6 weeks. Some of the hardships, some of the good things that they've experienced, possibly some changes that they made for this year or going to make. So this time we will let Mr. Quick go first. Good morning, board. Very interesting first 6 weeks. That's our motto this year is a year like no other. We currently have 493 kids at the high school, so a little bit bigger than years past. We started off the year with 94 kids virtually. We've got it down to about 56 now. And of those 94 kids that were in virtual program, we had about over 50% failed at least from 1 to 2. Most of them failed multiple classes in the first 6 weeks. 2 weeks before the end of the 6 weeks, we had about 70% failing at least a class. Our teachers literally lived on phones and emails and calling and hunting them down and getting phone numbers of a friend of a relative to get a hold of these kiddos. And that's why it's as low as it is. It's because our teachers are just, living on communication, trying to get these kids to turn stuff in and taking things late, just get us some work so we can see if you're learning, things like that. And so that's kind of been the shift as far as, tutorials used to be our way of finding these kids, find them in the hallway, getting them, taking them in there. Now it's tracking them virtually, trying to figure out where they are, learning how to turn stuff in. Dealing with, one computer for a family of household, internet's being spotty during Zooms for tutorials, things like that. And so what used to take a few minutes is now taking 30 to 45 to try and get kids, get grades in. So that's kind of been our struggle this year, but at the same time, there's always going to be struggle somewhere, and our teachers have just found new and better ways to address those struggles. And every day we're learning how to do that better. Is it foolproof? Absolutely not. But we're doing the best we can. We wish we had kids in face-to-face, but there's always circumstances where these kids can't do that. And so I think considering what we started with and not having a guide for anything that we're doing across the board, I think we've done a fantastic job as far as taking our the teachers have really taken it on the chin and just embraced it and done the best they can to help these kiddos each and every day. So we've got more and more coming back. We had 5 new kids from Bertha come back on campus today. So we're trying to get as many that are really struggling so that our teachers can see them and keep their confidence to help them be successful. Especially our juniors and seniors that are, might be in danger of not graduating on time. So,
Any questions, Mr. Quick? All right, thanks, sir. Yeah, you can leave when you're done. That's safer, but Mr. Bryan?
Good morning, board. Let's see, we started the year with 358 in the middle school, which is up from where we've been in the past. I'm sorry, 350. 94 of those were virtual. We've had several moving, so we're at 358 right now. And this morning, with the ones that came back on campus today, we're down to 24 virtual learners. And I think of those 24, probably 3 or 4 have legitimate need to be virtual learners as opposed to we're doing okay, but we want to stay home anyway, those kind. At 3 weeks, we had, like Mr. Quick said, our virtual learners in 6th grade were failing at a 96% rate. Our 7th grade virtual learners were failing at a 100% rate. And our 8th graders were failing at a 74% rate. Overall, 89.1% of the virtual learners were failing 1 or more classes across all grade levels. And so, at 3 weeks, teachers kicked in. I started making phone calls to parents, like Mr. Quick said, tracking down a friend, a mama of somebody's sister-in-law's wife's cousin to try to get a hold of these kids. We got it down to where in 6th grade, after 6 weeks, let me give y'all the failure rates for face-to-face learning at 3 weeks. For 6th grade, it was at 40%. For 7th grade, it was at 52%. And for 8th grade, it was at 29%. That's not uncommon at 3 weeks because teachers use that to get kids' attention. Oh, hey, you need to get it in gear, and so they do. So at the 6-week mark, 6th graders face-to-face had a 6% failure rate. Virtual learners had a 26% failure rate. 7th grade, face-to-face learners had a 16% failure rate, and virtual learners had a 77% failure rate. 8th grade had a 3% failure rate for face-to-face learners and a 54% failure rate for virtual learners. And what we found out as we were making phone calls with teachers are saying, kids are telling me, well, I submitted this assignment, okay? So I go to the teacher, hey, John Smith said he submitted this assignment. Yeah, he submitted it, but he didn't do any of the work. He just clicked submit. So mom sees it on her side, and it looks like it's been submitted and turned in. So she's arguing with me, oh, my kids doing the work. No, they're not. They're just submitting something. Overall, we had a 8.3% for face-to-face learners and 55% of the virtual learners at the end of the 6 weeks were failing. We made a change. We started at school. The teachers were trying to make contact and Zooming and emailing with the kids and trying to handle things that way. We found out that wasn't probably the best way to do things. So we ramped up phone calls, and Joe and I started making phone calls, trying to get these kids to get stuff turned in. We made some changes to our procedures on campus as far as grading, to give these kids an opportunity to try to get things turned in and still get a decent grade for it. Some of them took advantage of it. The 6th grade really did take advantage of it. The rest of them really probably did not. So, as of today, we are sitting with 23 full-time virtual learners from 94. We've got a few that are out. We've got one kid who's non-weight bearing on a leg for 4 weeks. We've got a few that are in quarantine that are out. But other than that, we've got 23 that are actual full-time decided we want to stay home and be virtual learners. this whole year has been a learning process for everybody, for me, for the teachers. I mean, I know I'm old and been doing this a long time. But it's a different world. It is a different world now, with the virtual learners. When we started out, our teachers were spending probably 3/4 of their time for a quarter of our kids, trying to make sure, because that's how teachers are. They want the best for every kid they teach, whether it's virtual, whether it's face-to-face. They want the very best for every kid. And they just found out there were times when they just couldn't make it happen because kids just wouldn't do it. They have worked themselves silly. I see it. I mean, all y'all know my wife's a teacher in a different district, but it's not just Taylor. I see her spending, last night, sitting at the dinner table for 3 or 4 hours working on stuff for virtual learning. And they don't have that many, working on stuff for her regular kids. So it's been a year of hard work from our teachers, and I'll take my hat off to that middle school staff any day of the week. They are the greatest middle school staff I've ever been associated with. I think we try to keep them bolstered up and picked up, and we do things like popcorn farm on Fridays. We do Sonic drinks, about once in 6 weeks. We just little things to try to keep their morale up and keep them going, because they work hard, folks. I want y'all to understand that. They have a passion and desire like none other. And I'm appreciative of the staff. Again, I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be here. It's a learning curve for me, guys, I'm telling you. It's not old school principalship anymore. It's getting busy, and but we're all learning, and I think we're doing a great job across the board.
Any questions from middle school? Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I think I had a teacher summarize it best for me, and it probably speak for every teacher right now in public education, is I am May tired in October. And so this is the first year I've seen a countdown to Thanksgiving. We've had countdowns to Christmas, and we've had countdowns to the end of school year, but we got a countdown to Thanksgiving at this point in time. And I think there's 3 things happening right now. And we got our traditional learning, and you think about that, and that weighs a burden on teachers just in a normal, every typical year-to-year setting, start of school, start of schedules, getting to know your kids, know 504 plans, special ed needs, modifications, like that in itself is a job. And now we had learned in the spring when we went virtual, and that virtual home learning stuff that we did in the spring was very minimal. And we know it. And what we did in the spring was just making sure that our kids were safe, that we had touch base with them, that they were okay physically and mentally. But that was the whole goal of the spring learning. But that was a part of that was a full-time goal. And so now we are combining the traditional learning with the remote virtual learning. And not only that, now we're not just trying to keep touch and keep up base with it, but now we're trying to learn at a level of rigor that matches what's happening in the classroom. And it's just not realistic. So you're combining these worlds together that is just really draining staff and teachers at this point in time. It's just not realistic. And as Mr. Bryan said, we're not the only district going through. But then you add this other little caveat. So we got our virtual learners and we got our traditional learners, but here's the one part that is really kind of weighing in is we've got these that are a moving target, if you will. And it's no fault of their own, but they're going into quarantine. So what happens when a kid is symptomatic and when a kid is exposed? Now we've got kids bouncing back and forth in between the two. So now we're really managing 3 different scenarios, which that in itself, and then we have these and Tatum, I think, is very blessed. We have these teachers that are very perfectionist, very A-type personality, and they want their kids learning. And they want to make sure that their needs are being met. And so that world is causing a whole bunch of anxiety and stress for those. So at the elementary campus, at the 3-week period, we decided this is not working. We had about a 70% average failure rate. And so we had a handful that was really rocking it. So we don't hear about those kids too often. There was a handful, but then, we had kids that we hadn't heard from. It was trying to get in touch with us, so we did home visits. And the home visits were really a wake-up call for a lot of our staff. They would knock on the door, and there would be a house full with no adults, and they were watching younger siblings that were not even at school age. And we're sitting there trying to tell them how to get into Google Classroom, log into the computer, make sure they understood it. But that's what the majority of it was like with our home visits, and to see what that was like. So we got a lot of them regrouped after progress report, but it still was not anywhere close to what we would have liked it to be. So long story short, at the end of the 6 weeks, we just decided our failure rate would have been terrible. But the teachers decided it was more important that the kids learn what they missed. So those, we kind of wheeled and dealed. If you agree to come back to us face-to-face, we'll give you an incomplete for 3 weeks. And then we offer extended day. So that starts today. So for those kids that were not successful, that didn't get their work, and we're going to find you one way or the other. And so they're starting to stay with us today after school. And it's still, they might not make it, because that's a lot of ground that they're having to cover. It was optional for the teachers to stay for this extended day, and all but one decided, no, it was worth it, that we needed to make sure. Because if not, what they're seeing is the kids that are coming back to us face-to-face, they've got a big gap. They're not anywhere close to the kids that we have with us for the full 6 weeks. So they got to catch them up. So anyway, today we start our extended day. It'll last for 3 weeks, and whatever grade they have at the end of that time period is the grade that they're going to be able to get. But our incomplete is 3 pages long, so it would have ended up being a long failure list. And it still could be, but we're going to at least try and give them some extra time to get it made up.
Any questions? Thank you. Ms. Pye.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm on the extra one. I have my clothes. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking of anything. At the beginning of the year, I shared this scripture with my staff. And while this year has had and will continue to have many challenges, my job has been to ensure that TPS staff understands that this year and all the tests of life are meant to make us and not break us. In order to withstand life's challenges, perception, positive attitude, and faith are critical to embrace these trials, not for what they presently are, but for the outcome that will be accomplished through them. So at TPS, we view this year as an opportunity to grow, mature, become better teachers, leaders, and people. And up until this day, TPS teachers and staff have risen to the occasion, and I have been in absolute awe and super proud of those that have gone over and beyond. I really can't, I had to write it down because I didn't want to, the TPS staff has truly been amazing. And yes, this year is full of challenges, but like I told them from the beginning, I have no doubt that we will do whatever it takes to get those students from where they are to where they need to be. I just have to make sure that staff takes care of themselves while doing that, because they do put in a lot of time and a lot of work because they love these kids and they love what they do. So that is a true blessing. Well, and I'll start with our virtual. Here at TPS, our platform is a little different. We use what they call a seesaw platform, and it's very kid friendly. We did like a boot camp for the parents to try to help them through. Miss Quick has just kind of taken over Seesaw. She kind of delved into it, and so she's become our go-to person for the Seesaw platform. Our setup is a little different. I'm blessed to have 4 teachers that actually volunteered because they didn't want that stress on the classroom teachers. So we have 4 virtual teachers. Miss Williams does my pre-K virtual. Ms. Quick does kinder, Ms. Vonna Nicholson does first grade, and Ms. Sorensen does second grade. The first 6 weeks, Ms. Williams and Ms. Quick didn't have kids. We set up the classes to where face-to-face kids went into the classrooms. And so they had that first 6 weeks to kind of troubleshoot, get the lessons together, and kind of prepare for the next 6 weeks. Now that the kids are kind of transferring back in, they have the double duty of face-to-face as well as virtual, but they kind of have that little time. We've made the schedule to where they have about an hour and a half conference to prepare for the next week's lesson. So their job is about to get even more stressful. But we were blessed with that first 6 weeks. We started off with about 70 virtual students the first 6 weeks. Now, you know, we're with the babies, so we have a lot of parent involvement. So we only had 68 of those 70 not successful. However, it was so much parent involvement, we didn't really know how much the child was actually doing. So that was more of our issue. And we know that our babies, they learn better face-to-face. A lot of the things that when we're teaching phonics and, you know, different things, it's about the hands-on activities, and it's just harder to do virtually. So we'll see exactly with those transitioning back, we'll see exactly how much they truly learned during that time. We have had 42 of our students return, and so we're now down to 28 virtual students. And I think that's all. The teachers really have been able to focus. We had a couple of new programs that were a little stressful. I learned that this was not the best time to try some new programs, so that was on me. So we're doing everything to kind of ease that stress. But when we did our first 6 weeks data, it really was not as bad as what we thought. The problem is we stopped in the 5th 6 weeks. So that's where basically the students were. And it's really getting the teachers to understand that, okay, guys, they're really not first grade, or they're really not kinder, and they're really not second. These are, you know, last year, 5th 6 week students. I thought because of the 5 month, it would be a lot of regression, but just even in that first 6 weeks, the teachers were able to remediate and get students at least where they were, where they left last year, and some were even further ahead. We also went and addressed the scope and sequence of last year, and we looked at those previous skills that weren't taught, and the teachers did a lot of that in the first 6 weeks in order to ensure that those skills were addressed and we weren't creating gaps trying to move on to the next lesson. One other thing, we've done a lot of different things, and I know I talk too much, but the COVID things that we've done different, our COVID precautions, we thought that, you know, our babies would have a problem wearing masks. They've actually done a tremendous job. They keep them on. The teachers have done a great job at cleaning out the rooms. They've spaced out. If you see any of the pictures, our teachers have gotten very creative, trying to make, you know, dividers, spacing out the rooms. So we have a lot of things trying to make it as normal for our students as possible, trying to ensure that they still have fun and have that experience, because socialization is important for this age. We make sure that we've, in our schedule, had at least 2 supervised hand washings, because, you know, this is our kids, they love, so we have to, you know, our teachers have set aside that time. We've become very self-contained, so my kids stay with their homeroom all day. I've added an extra specials class. It's called the Think Tank. Miss Kim does the Think Tank. It's like a stream, and the kids have loved it. But it added us another class to where each homeroom has a place to go during specials, so we don't have the mixing of the homerooms. This helps with the containment, and it also helps with the contact tracing if it ever does come about. We've added extra intervention teachers, so those kids go to one intervention teacher. We don't have that mixing. We've assigned different classes, places on the playground so that they don't have to mix. And even my life skills kids, I've taken on and had to, you know, my teachers have taken on many hats, so I was like, you know, I'm gonna get in there with you. So I picked up some resource classes as well on my end to kind of help so that our life skills students and resource students don't have to mix. Our cafeteria has been amazing. We do breakfast in the classroom. They worked out a system, it's already there, they come and pick it up. Our lunches, we spaced them out to where there's only about 3 classes in there, but they're all grouped together. And Miss Pam has been amazing. By the time those kids sit down, they already have their lunch in hand and ready to eat. I've been extremely proud of everyone on that staff. Everybody, from Nurse Sykes to Miss Pam, I really can't say enough about how they just stepped up to the challenge. And it's a lot to be proud of. Yes, it is a rough year, and I do worry about how long they can keep this up. But we do a lot of things to try to address not only the social emotional needs of the student, but also to our staff as well. Thank you so much.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Principal, appreciate you.
There is one group I failed to mention that has gone way above and beyond. That's our custodial staff. Those ladies, every morning before the kids get here, they're using those foggers, fogging electrostatic, fogging the rooms to try to keep this up. They have done an outstanding job. So I wanted to mention that too.
Thank you. Next item we have for the bilingual, every year we have to do a bilingual ESL program evaluation report. There's some notes in there that you've been able to view, but we currently have 230 students last year that were considered limited English proficient. And due to COVID, we were not able to use our TELPAS, so we used a thing called Loss Links to measure that. We have 15 members trained. Last year we had a Spanish teacher that we had trained to be ESL. One of the things Mr. Fike is working on is when we hire a new teacher, we're trying to get them ESL certified. We've actually put it into some contracts that they have a year to be ESL certified. We will be over in some grades this year, so again, and that's nothing normal, it's about 5 grades that we're gonna have 20 or more ESL children, and so we'll do an ESL waiver for them. So again, that nothing's changed there, except we instituted that a few years back that anybody new hired, we would try to get them ESL certified, and they do receive a stipend for that. I believe that's is it $1,000 the first year, and then after that, 500. So the next item I have is our District Goal 1. District Goal 1 involved in safety, and Mr. Fike's going to visit about that. And this is a recap from last year.
District Goal 1, Tatum ISD community places the highest priority on the safety and security of the students and staff.
So we're looking at goal 1, of course, safety is our #1 issue, and kind of talking about students and anything. When the environment is conducive to learning, kids are gonna learn that, staff feel more responsible, and also their safety is important also. But when you look at this, these are the ordinary things that you see every day, as far as gates and so forth. And right now, and speaking of gates, we're in the middle of an audit right now. And 3-year audit for our safety, and as of Friday, he came through, on Thursday, he was on campus, and we have currently right now 4 gates that need motors. And of course, when he's doing his audit, you're not supposed to be walking these gates. Well, one prime example is the gate by the subway. If you close that gate, we would have to get out every time because that gate is on motor. Well, that motor is out, and we have the parts ordered. It's just a matter of getting them in and putting it on there. But he should be able to drive on the back. And that's one of the things that he sent me this morning. He said there's some issues that we need to address. And as I explained, we've ordered, we're aware of it, and we'll get it fixed. But that's one of the things we're talking about when they go in and do an audit, being able to walk on campuses and just freely walk on as an outsider or a visitor. Should be some checking processes. So currently, right now, we are. These items here are the every day trying to ensure. If you go down towards the bottom, one of the things that was new this past year was the safety and security team. And that's one of the things, and you can look on those members. We talk about the safety of the school. It's some people who play a vital role in talking about how can we improve, what's in place, what do we need to do, how can we make it better. And of course, when you're talking about, which this report wouldn't go until next year, but talking about the things that currently, what we would have in place as we move forward this year in the era of COVID, there are a lot of, when you talk about safety, different things we have to worry about that we know this is for this year. So that particular team addresses those things. And when you're talking about training, many of you done cyber training. That was a new thing that we had to put in. You had to get it completed by June of this summer. And you all had to get that completed, but all our training is online. So that's one of those things that addresses that aspect of it. And of course, when I was just speaking of, go right back up to the very 2 rows up. 2 rows up. There you go. Right, the 3-year safety audit, like as I stated, we were supposed to get it done in the spring, however, with COVID, nobody's on campus. So they're currently doing it right now. It'll be completed and have to be sent in and put in place with the Texas School Safety Center in November. So I will get that report. We'll be presenting that to you also, and being able to share whatever the findings are and help be taken back to the safety team to talk about how can we fix it and some areas on what to do. Goal 3. This is a little different because it's also somewhat misleading. I wouldn't say misleading, but it's not complete. And on the typical year where we're looking at data. So when you look at 3.1, everything we get in Mexican, which is awesome. But at the same time, we know we didn't finish the school year and we only went through March, spring break. So when you look at total referrals for 18-19, there were 911 as opposed to through March it was 586. So yeah, we met the standard, but yet the data is really not complete. Now, I will say from a discipline standpoint, we are going down. We do have kids that are late and then have kids that are heading right. So that is good news, and our campus principals are doing an excellent job in heading off and being proactive in dealing with discipline. So those things are up. Of course, when you're talking about the drugs and the weapons, yeah, those things, unfortunately, being in a small town, doesn't stop us or doesn't hinder us from getting these type of incidents. But it's not an alarming rate. We will have some who's going to stay in the experimental stage and want to try and do, or, you know, they found it and heard about it on social media and want to try. But overall, I can't. Bullying plan, it hasn't changed much. It's still in place, and for complying with the law, being able to report the victims and also the ones that are being bullied. Again, we know back in years past, everybody's kind of confused on what is truly bullying and what is considered harassment, those definitions and meeting those type of quotas as far as what defines it. And once we got it all, you really didn't get too much about bullying anymore as far as, oh, my child has been bullied. Well, let's hit the litmus test and see. And it doesn't hit that. But the requirements as far as documentation, it's all in there as far as for a parent to be able to report it. And of course, we still have Crime Stoppers, which they can report anonymous. We still have to have that. There's an email and there is a phone that you call in case these events take place. On the last one, should be 3.2, 3.3 data. In looking at these things, there's some areas that truly we need to address once again. We didn't complete it. So activities and things, this is kind of a year when we talk about activities and the things that they need to do. A lot of that takes place in the spring. You're talking about fundraisers, you're talking about concerts and things open to the public. It's misleading. But yet, based upon the criteria, it is what it is with me. And vice versa, the same as we met the other ones because of short year. We did meet some of these because of the short year. So hopefully this year, we'll be able to go into and compare apples to apples as opposed to the difference between how the year ended on certain things. And when you're talking about where we are here, as far as sports and how we're doing our best as far as dealing with Coach Holman, as far as dealing with the lower levels and also Coach Mark and dealing with the lower levels, getting girls for there to continue to be competitive. Number one, continue to have our numbers up where we can go and represent Taylor at a high standard. And that's truly the goal when we're looking at all these activities and particular groups. And a lot of them, of course, weren't able to compete because of COVID. And we want to continue to stress the importance, especially at our lower levels. Number one, keeping kids engaged and involved, because at that level is very important. And number one, making sure that they enjoy it, and hopefully by the time they get to high school, they find their niche and continue to be a part of the program. So hopefully next year, by the time we do this report, there will be a lot of additions that are required by law, and it'll look a little different. But based upon how the year went and shortened, that's kind of hard to prepare from previous year's data. Any questions?
Next item is action item, consider and approve a suspension of virtual learning. I attached a letter in here, and this is something that we have been looking and studying with our principals, visiting with staff, and when we got the failure relay, we just thought there's no way we can continue at this rate. And the time our teachers are putting in is, we're gonna lose teachers, we feel, that normally we probably wouldn't lose, that are at retirement age that we don't wanna lose. And so we felt like we've got to send a message. So what we require of the principals is that the 3 weeks, do everything you can to get them back up here. As you saw, their numbers went down, but they didn't get everybody back up there. We do have some legitimate concerns, but medical reasons, and we understand that. We're not going to make those children come back. But there is a form that they would have to fill out to let us know. And it's just like, you know, you've heard of homebound before. It'd be similar to that. We're going to educate you. If a kid has a broken leg, whatever it may be, they're going to be at home. We're going to continue to educate them like we've always done before. It's just, we're just got to take the virtual away right now. It might come back if we got to all go out. You know, if there's a campus, we understand that. But I think you're going to see, if the board approves this, you're going to send you're going to see a huge, I don't know if it's confidence or it's just going to be like overwhelmingly thank you from our staff, because it has been. And again, we're not trained. That's our fault. I'll be honest. We're not trained to be able to administer virtual like it should be. Miss Fife has the best system. She had it. You heard what she said. Now those kids are coming back. They got to do both. Like all the other campuses are juggling both. The first 6 weeks was great because they were just a virtual teacher. And that's why you probably saw some of the successes that they had. They also had a concern. Who's doing the work? And we know if we continue at this rate and they stay out all year and they come back next year, they stay till May, then they're going to be a year and a half behind.
And let me say, I would say too, here I had this conversation, and it's more of, we're trying to, instill a culture of teachers doing any and everything possible to help a kid. Self-efficacy. If that kid is struggling, what are you doing about it? So we've instilled it. So now it's the flip side. Is now this kid's not been successful virtually. So those same teachers who have been here a while are doing any and everything. So when we talk about those long stressful hours, it's tough because they're trying to go above and beyond to make sure we've done everything we can for that kid, but it's random, and it makes it tough. So it's a culture change we're trying to deal with this also. When you talk about those kids for failing and trying to get them, teachers are doing all the kids, yeah, they are, and even more.
In our cases, we had one pop up, I guess, this weekend at the high school. But overall, we, as in the letter, I'll have to change the letter, we hadn't had any new cases in 2 weeks. So right now in the district, we've got one positive case. And that family, the brother had it, was the other positive. So, it stayed in the family, I guess I should say. Not that that makes it any better or worse, but again, that was, the sibling had it also earlier. Is one of the numbers that we had. And again, we realize there are children that need to stay virtual for medical reasons. We don't have an issue with that. But the ones that, even if they are taking care of business and they don't have any medical needs, they need to come back on campus. And the majority of them are just not doing the work.
Teachers don't have time to stay on with kids.
That's it.
No.
And we're burning our teachers out. It's all across the state. We are burning.
You saw Tyler did it.
Yeah.
They're the biggest district I've seen. Hallsville, I think, announced it. Franklin also, Lindale, Laneville, Carlisle, Mount Enterprise, all of that group are doing it this week also too.
Our teachers are suffering, and the kids that are in school are suffering.
Yes.
Because it's taking away, taking a toll on them. It's crazy.
There's a question on that, like, all our kids coming back, and then, like, the ones who don't have, you get them, we get especially, what if you've got someone, like, not that particular child that's coming to school, but what they got a sibling, a younger sibling in the household or something, that may have health problems, they come here, they may take that back, what we
actually have one like that. We have you know that the situation with that high school brother,
Not necessarily to the district, but there's a life skills student that has siblings that they're staying at home, that are bring it back to the life skills kids.
and so they would be fine, so.
Right.
Will there be like one teacher that handles these that stays home, or how will that work?
It'll continue running like we have been, it's just that teacher might just have 2 kids now,
Not.
that they're responsible versus 30. Yeah.
I don't even track that.
Mhm.
Which we do at their home, that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There's a problem at the lower level is easy. You got a home teacher. Elementary, you may have a pod where you go to 3 to, total of 3 to 3. Primary, 4 to 7. And the problem is when you get to middle school, right?
Yeah.
You got 8 different classes. What does that look like? So to have one teacher, I mean, we don't have to look at it, they have one virtual teacher to do all of that, and that's the process. It'll be great, but it's not feasible.
Well, for example, been on, like middle school, out of 493 students, we got right now 56, I believe we said that are virtual. What do you think that, when we do this, what do you think we can actually get that number down?
Under 10.
Under 10?
Easy.
That's manual. So there will be teachers
Absolutely.
that don't have any virtual learning.
Correct.
There will be some.
But, when you're talking about searching for work and getting a pen, getting a thumb on one, I can get my thumb on in 5 as opposed to 7.
And that's the deal with our teachers at the middle school. We got one math teacher in 7th grade.
Yeah.
They're doing 70 students right now.
Yes, that's.
Or 50.
Yeah.
So then in middle school, they got 24 right now. We foresee we get that number down to 5.
Correct.
Well, I think he made mention, it was probably, I don't know, it was a very small number who legitimately would need.
Got me?
That was the whole middle school.
Yes.
What's our teacher's general opinion? I mean, do we have any teachers that are really fearful of doing this going back?
Say going back.
I mean, bringing all our kids back. They're all good with this, aren't they? But I know they're burnt out, but I mean, there was a certain point in time that you had some teachers who had a voice out there in public that were like, we don't need to do this, these kids need to stay home. Because we're scared for our health.
Right, and I think once they got here, and I can speak of one that I talked to, and they saw what we had in place, and then they saw it, I guess it wasn't as bad as they thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
It's just that teacher is one of the teachers I'm worried about that could walk out the door tomorrow. She's got the years, and she's a phenomenal math teacher at the high school. And that is just, but she's staying up till 11 o'clock at night. And these kids will email the teacher at, 11 o'clock because they have until 11:59. They turn it in. I mean, and you have to tell the teacher to turn it off. Well, I can't turn my phone off because I've got a relative that might have to call. Well, ding, ding, and you try to explain, well, there's a way to turn that email thing off. But, then you start to mess with their mojo. Well, I like the ding. Helps me out during the day, and like, okay.
And it becomes more, conversation with the boy last week. It becomes more personality. Again, what the philosophy and process, this teacher, who's learning, will do any and everything to help students. So when you're talking about, no, I'm not gonna do this, I'm gonna put some parameters on it. That's not in the personality. And that's just the tough part about it, but basically on your personality, it's wearing you out because, sometimes people who can't say no, you just overextend yourself, and that's kind of what you get into, because they overextend themselves because I'm going above and beyond, and that's what we want, but yet, there's a limit.
They may say no, but once they say no, then they're living with that guilt every day.
Yeah, exactly. What, they feel like they're failures.
They feel like they're failing.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to approve the suspension of virtual learning of students returning to all campuses effective October 19th, 2020?
Mr. President, so moved that we suspend virtual learning according to the guidelines that are set forth by the administration.
Mr. Smith has made a motion. Ms. Amy is second. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Consider one concern that I have, I didn't get to know, because usually we do this discussion after the motion. But, all of the things that are said are very valid concerns, but I have a concern in virtual learning and heard it before. Is the right. These grades should not be considered on the same level as the obviously homeschool students. I know two very fine examples of valedictorians that cheated on campus. So what are they going to do if you might have one that stayed home to bring the grades up? And they could get a Kilgore professor to do their grades. And, you say, well, I'm looking at them on the deal. They can be sitting on the ground behind you and taking the test or whatever. So that's just my concern, and I'm sorry I wasted your time. But if your administrators are in meetings to talk about virtual learning somewhere, this topic should be brought up. You can get credit for the course, but your grade does not count on the same level as everybody else. Thank you.
Next item I have is the budget amendment for the purchase of a 12-passenger two-wheel station bus. This is a critical need right now that we need to have. This will be one of our handicap buses. Currently, when I asked Ms. Beth about, Ms. Green about a 72 passenger, she said we're actually pretty good right now. I was thinking we probably should go for it, but she said no. We need the small bus, and this will be the same company that we bought our other buses from. So it does come with a warranty, and she did mention something about the work trucks, but I haven't got, she's looking at that. Apparently our work trucks are getting up there, and I've sent her some information on an enterprise. I've seen where they've come out and do a lease program with businesses and schools. So might look at that too, but right now, this is just for your recommendation for approval for handicap bus.
I like to go and have a CD.
That's correct.
So currently, right now, the driver is driving now, doesn't happen. Okay. It's hard enough to find a driver, so better get a bus, not having like requirements of the other officers.
I need a motion to approve a budget amendment in function 34 for the purpose of purchasing a school bus in the amount of $53,900 from American Bus Sales as presented.
Mr. President, I so move.
Ms. McElwain, and Mr. Kenneth, second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously.
One question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Says complete service with lead or builder. What does that actually mean? Does that mean it's gonna be completely removed and service when you get here?
Yes.
I know when I buy a new car, I get 4 services within 2 years.
That means they're gonna do a service before they pull it out there in the
Or
car.
I suppose so.
Okay. All right, the board will now convene in a closed meeting to discuss the following items posted on our agenda this morning as allowed by the Texas Government Code 551.074 to discuss the superintendent's evaluation instrument and the employment and resignation of professional personnel. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open meeting. It is now 9:24. Thank you.
We're going to show you something else.